you should absolutely be self-absorbed. And we're going to talk about that because it's a bit contradictory to some of the other things I have to say. So we're going to elucidate that. We're going to draw it out. My name is Lucian Francois Mateus St. James. I am a spiritual epidemiologist, metaphysical lecturer, and we're here in the Electric Temple. All messages are brought to you by and are courtesy of the Electric Temple. This ministry of the Assumption Absolute is here, as always, to encourage you in knowing with empowered conviction the truth of your transcendent divinity. I appreciate you co-creating this moment with me. Now, when I talk about self-absorption, that's kind of contradictory because I'm always talking about how the ego, and the ego being the personality, the limit, the identity, the label, the understanding and the assignment of external criteria to the internal assessment of self. I'm always talking about how that's not, I mean, we allow it to drive the car, but when we allow the ego to drive the car, we live in lack, scarcity, fear, and isolation, usually, typically, or not typically. I mean, that's what the ego can do. The ego can cling, the ego can replay past events, the ego can name what it already knows, the ego searches for facts. The ego is invested in what can be known, so it can attach what can be known to the self and say, look, here I am, there's my safety. And so when I talk about self-absorption, what I really mean is for the essence, it's kind of difficult to talk about because there's the lowercase s self in terms of the ego and your personality meets you 3D avatar character, and then there's the uppercase s self, which is your divinity. You are the all that is, as we are always talking about here, that you are God, you are divinity incarnate, you are here in the flesh experiencing an individualized expression persona of God in a fragmented sense, as we all are, as all things are made of the same source consciousness, which would mean that you are the God of your reality. So what I mean by self-absorption, keeping all of that in mind, is that you need to be paying attention to yourself. This is the core of the message right here, is that your attention is the most valuable currency you have. And we spend it like it's going on a style, like we don't give a damn about what we're allowing into our psyche, what we're allowing to be internalized, and how we start aligning ourselves with everything that is thrown at us from every single direction. So think of your attention as currency. I mean, think of the amount of money advertisers spend trying to get your attention. You know, when you start listening to subliminals, you can start to differentiate different frequencies. You can begin to hear, you know, okay, oh, that's like a root chakra hertz. Oh, that's 432. You know, oh, that's solfeggio. You know, when you're listening to the stuff all the time. And there was a Reese's commercial that for Halloween that came on Hulu. I was watching American Dad, and the frequency of it, like it changed. I was like, that's subliminal. Now, aren't all advertisements subliminal? I don't know. There was something weird, very specific about this one. So I mean, you know, you've got people like quite literally like in a lab trying to figure out how they can get your attention. You have, you know, Tom, Dick, Joe, and Harry and their kids and their dogs and all the people in the world saying, hey, pay attention to me, because nobody's paying attention to themselves. So everybody's saying, hey, pay attention to me. And I mean, I would suggest a period. If, and I know, you know, when you got a family, it's difficult, but you know, it's something that you, if you choose to walk this path, you will have to make a priority at some point. I don't know what that looks like for each individual, but you have to find and start making time for yourself away from the presence of other people, because that's the, and in, you know, a meditative state. I'm not saying meditation is the only way. I wouldn't dare be as arrogant as to say that there is one specific way to do things. But I will say that if you can't sit into the silence of yourself, how can you know even what you've been programming yourself on a basis of ego personality? How do you know what programs you've been running if you can't sit and listen to you? So that's what I'm talking about, self-absorption. You know, it's such a bad thing. People think, oh, well, you know, I have to be available to everyone. We live in this society, this technology now where everybody's on demand. And I'm not. I keep my phone on do not disturb at all points in time. I mean, I don't have anybody that would need me for an emergency. And if they do, I mean, I'm just I'm not the person. I will, if there was somebody close enough to me that said, hey, I need you to be my emergency contact, I don't know, I'd probably tell them, oof. It would depend on the relationship. I don't have those relationships in my life right now. But yeah, I keep my phone on do not disturb. There's nobody that's just gonna, crash into my world and demand something of me. And I just spent 3 weeks in just deep solitude and isolation. Going through it. I'm always talking about death and rebirth, going through death and rebirth, and really just assessing everything that has led up to this moment and different transitions I'm going through at this point in time. And it was it was so transformative and so peaceful, and I got so used to talking to myself. Of course, there were ministry messages released during that time, but talking to myself and talking to my daemon and talking to my guides, which are just different aspects of myself. Like talking to other people, like I was talking about previously I just DJ'd a wedding, which like weddings are so weird. It was probably, referring to my first marriage. I mean, I've only been married once, no longer, but it was probably about 3 years into my marriage where at that point in time, me and my wife had really, I'm not saying this is, this doesn't have to apply to you. This is just me talking, you're on my channel, I'm just speaking. But it was probably about 3 years into it where we kind of regretted getting married. And not because, well, we're obviously not together now, but not because, it's not working out, but at that point in time, we decided to stop wearing wedding rings because we had thought about like, gosh darn it, like, what does it mean to be married? And then if you look into the history of that and what it meant for women specifically, and it's just like, this is really master and servant, domination-y, like I own you type shit, and that's just, it's not a vibe. So, and I don't know. I don't even know why people I care about. I used to DJ a lot, so people I care about or people I have some modicum of love for. I mean, I've got love for all individuals as we're all expressions of the one source consciousness. But I will say, fine, on an ego 3D personality basis, if I've got some love for a person, we'll DJ their wedding if they ask. But it's just such a strange thing, and how perfect everything has to go. And I'm not even talking about like a specific wedding, just how like timed everything is, and I mean weddings have a vibration of force behind them. And I'm not saying two people come together and of course they consent with their willing selves to be wed to each other. We're not talking about that. I'm just saying like the energy of this space. And of course I've got another wedding next year. And I think after that it's done. Like I think after that I need to stop bringing in that energy into my space and just start, because I just fundamentally don't agree with it. It's weird to me. So anyway, but let's talk about being self-absorbed. I mean, yeah, because you have to pay attention to your own ideas. Being self-absorbed means you say no to things that are, so I mean, you're looking at this transition in real time where I'm like, man, I got to start saying no to weddings, not because of the people, not because of what the venue or anything to do with anybody else. It's just for me, like the institution of marriage. And I was in an institution of marriage, and we had decided, I mean, pretty early on, even into it, it's like, oh, this is, so we stopped wearing our wedding rings, and, I mean, obviously the rest of that played out the years to come, and, now we're no longer together. But yeah, you have to be absorbed within yourself. You have to know what your ideals are. You have to know what your values are. You have to know what you're willing to say no to. You have to be invested in yourself, because there are so many people trying to, because they're not paying attention to themselves. Everybody, I feel, for the most part, not everybody, I don't mean everybody, but a lot of people are walking around with handouts saying, here, pay attention to me. Everybody wants something from another person so they can feel more whole within themselves. And of course, this is not happening consciously. I mean, we're taught by the family system, we're taught by the school system, we're taught by all of these different influences in our upbringing that like other people are the key to your happiness. And that being on a basis of friendship, that being on a basis of yeah, marriage, relationships, that being on a basis of does my boss approve of me? Does that mean I'm a good worker? If, the everything we want, whether it be self-worth or whether it be finance or whether it be a deeper understanding of yourself. I mean, if you want to be free, you have to let go. You have to let go of the insistence that anybody will ever understand you. And I'm going to be honest, I have to tread carefully walking this line in my life, tread carefully in this with this deep self-investment, this deep self-absorption, this just kind of just general. I mean, I do get angsty. I will, I'm as a God walking around here, I'm not saying that I'm perfect and that all of my emotions are perfectly aligned and that everything's perfectly perfect. Not at all. I have when I'm out socializing with people, I have to realize I'm like in a space of people that I need to um, be in a space of kindness, be in a space of openness, be in a space of understanding and willingness to listen. And it's not that any of those things are difficult for me to access, but especially after that deep period of, really soul hibernation, coming out to talk to other people, and then especially to do it in such a public way. I mean, that really was, kind of like a construction of like an ego persona. And when you stop looking for people to understand you, that is at that point in time. So when you open yourself to this void, at that point in time, that is maybe potentially once you stop needing it, when you will find people that resonate with you and understand pieces in the way that they can hear what you're saying. And there's that Ram Dass quote that I'm going to pull up that I screw up, but it's only the me that's in you that can hear what I'm saying. When you stop searching, and it's not because you stop searching, but when you let it go, when you decide to be your own source of self, and you decide to stop being the version of yourself that is understood by other people but is dismissed from you because you've not been paying attention to you. You should love yourself, and I'm not saying that that's just an easy. You should just love yourself. I'm not saying that that's something that you just hop, skip, and jump to, but how do you want to see yourself? If you want to see yourself as gorgeous, if you want to see yourself as fit, if you want to see yourself as wealthy, as free, as autonomous, there are steps you can take to actualize those things. And it is a matter of what you're visualizing. It is a matter of the space of energetic origin or the field, as I've talked about, that you are allowing yourself to be in resonance with. It is, I don't know if I said thoughts, it is the thoughts and it is actions. There's some spiritual teachers that suggest you don't have to do anything. And I don't think that I will never criticize anybody's spiritual teachings because whatever's worked for them is whatever's, like, there's absolutely no one path. Nobody has all of the answers here because if they did, we wouldn't be in these meat suits. I mean, we can, continue to collect and continue to gather, of course, and continue to expand, but nobody will ever be the whole complete show of what it takes to become. And what are you becoming? I mean, what the hell does that even mean? Some spiritual teachers say you don't have to do anything. What I mean is, or what I hear in that is that it should be effortless. If you are, for instance, going to the gym because you hate yourself, you're going to be exerting a lot of effort to get there. But if it's already in flow with how you see yourself and who you understand yourself to be, if regardless of your body type, if you view yourself to be a fit person who has a healthy lifestyle and expresses that in actions of physical activity because there's an investment in not wanting to just deteriorate and rot from here to death. It's maybe a bit deeper the way to say it, but if you're invested in growth and in building, and if even just, I'm not even talking about bodybuilding, but just like necessary maintenance, that's probably, I just like to stay firm. I just like to stay toned. I'm not. Now, the trainer I have, I feel like she wants to make a bodybuilder out of me. Jesus Christ. But it's not fun. But are you willing to do things for yourself that are not fun in order to create, to actualize, to manifest the version of yourself that would make you proud of you? And you have to take time to be invested in yourself in order to do that. And also be willing to let go. Like I'm just talking to you in real time. I'm going to have to let go of that shadow aspect of my life that I don't DJ anything besides weddings. I do weddings and charity events. Charity events are always fine. I don't have any I mean, obviously depending on what it is, but most of the time they're like, substance use community recovery related when I do one. So that's like no big deal. But I'm gonna have to let go of that version of myself that says yes to weddings simply because I have love for that person and wish them well on their journey. I'm gonna have to let go of that, not because of the person, but because the institution of marriage to me is just not something that I agree with anymore. And you have to be willing to stand in your truth, regardless of how it might sound to other people. Other people are not going to agree with you. And again, I have to watch my angst because and I've definitely had eras of my life, years where I was just like, fuck you to everybody. Like, I don't give a shit about what you have to say. I don't care. I'm not interested. Leave me alone. I can, which is a sense of maybe like, hyper guardedness or, hyper independence or whatever. And in those areas of my life, it was very difficult for me to receive. So I'm not at all saying that that's the answer. And you have to be open to what's available to you at that point in time. And again, look at that energetic space of resonance that you're occupying. I didn't plot any points for this video. I had there's just a lot going on. So I figured I'd get some of it on camera. But you have to be willing to invest that time in yourself. You have to be willing to pay attention to yourself. You have to be, if we're wrapping up show notes, you have to be willing to be misunderstood, and you have to let go of former ideas of yourself, and be willing to make space for the new. Obviously the name that I have, well, not obviously, but it's obvious to me. The name that I have, Lucien Francois Mateo St. James, is a name that I gave myself. That was like my baptism into the becoming of self as divinity, of understanding myself to be God of my reality. And the minute that I did that, everything in my life fell away because I welcomed that void and that empty space into my life to help wash away everything that was not in resonance. If we look at Lucien, it's of Luciferian lineage, and not Luciferian as in those like edgy I hate church lords that I went to a satanic party once. It was like a satanic stripper party because I had a friend that was performing. I mainly went to support the friend at the time. They were a burlesque dancer, and it was going to be one of their last shows, and it was their art form. And of course, I'm open to the more erotic side of things, so I went, and it was just like, as I was with my ex-wife at the time, and I looked at her, I was like, this is lame, dude. This is lame, like this is just a bunch of people. They were like ripping pages out of the Bible. And it's just like, here's the thing. If you're rebelling against something, you're still controlled by it. Like if you're rebelling against the church, and I know this having gone to a Christian school twice, why the fuck did I do that? I know why I did it, but you're still controlled by it because you're still linked to it because your idea is still in opposition to it, so it's Satanists, they're, here's the thing, I just said I wasn't going to criticize anybody's spiritual beliefs. I mean, if there's anybody that I'd rip on, it'd be the Satanists, there's just, an Anton LaVey satanic Bible. I mean, if you get into that, it's just fucking hokey. I mean, it's just silly. I don't know, but that party, I mean, it was trying so, it was like trying so hard to be sexy that it wasn't, it just was, I don't know, it was just like, we're gonna be nude and do this show, and even the pool of blood that the dancers were in, I don't know, it looked like Kool-Aid. I mean, they could have put some, I don't know, I love horror. I'm like, they should have hired me. We could have did this the right way. My friend had an amazing performance. She did well. Now, and I'm not even criticizing any of the dancers, but just like the context around the party itself. If it was just a strip party, sure, cool, but there was like the satanic edge where like, the church is blah, 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 hurt all of us, and, women should be free and naked, and, we're going to light these candles and burn the Bible. It's just like, God, it's like, So anyway, because if I said that, because if you look up Luciferian anything, a bunch of satanic stuff comes up. A lot of Satanists, I don't know, but then a lot of Satanists themselves don't necessarily worship Lucifer or Satan. Some Satanists understand Lucifer to be the same person. Others don't, so I'm just saying, it's not connected to any of that. And then there's just a small story in there. But anyway, this is more anecdotal today. as it always is. Ministry of Assumption, absolute. But Lucian of Luciferian lineage, because what Lucifer can translate to is just a bringer of light, the morning star, referring to Venus. And some of my numbers in you look at my numerology, there's different, you'll have a life path number and a master number and all of these different things. And one of my numbers adds up to 6, which is the number of Venus. So I'm a Venetian. I'm, obsessed with, beauty and shining of light, of, all of that, sex and pleasure. So, but Lucian means illumination. Francois means free man, free, whatever, they, them person. Mateo, gift of God, meaning gift of myself. And St. James means protected by God, and does carry that lineage of St. James. Think of something else. But St. James, the apostle of Jesus, that was the first to be crucified, or at least St. James the Greater, because there's a lesser too in the Bible. But that was the first to be crucified, after Jesus for, going about and teaching, or at least that's the way the story goes, which to me was a symbol of, being willing to die into and unto the truth, into and unto the truth. At all points in time, even to myself. So to kind of welcome this like continual unpeeling of my ego that will never stop, which will continually kind of feel like a death and rebirth all the time, that Ouroboros, that fucking snake. But once you, and what that brought me into was a deep period of solitude where, I was driving home from that, I was supposed to stay in the Airbnb another day, but I don't know, it felt weird in there. It's really hard for me to be in other spaces. I am a Cancer, so I like my shell. I like wherever I am. I could be living in a fucking tent that I erected. It has to be my space. It's just weird. It was fine. It was great. It's just weird for me. But you should be comfortable wherever you're at, because inside your heart is home. This is the raw edge of me today, because I think I'm just, I get around a lot of people, and it takes a day for me to come back to self, to come back to space. What was I talking about? Oh, once I changed my name, I was immediately ushered into a deep period of solitude. I was driving home yesterday from the DJ event, and usually I'll just listen to frequencies. Like usually I'll just listen to like root chakra frequencies after I have a large a space with a lot of people that I'm in, and maybe I'm entertaining it or that I'm talking in some capacity. And this was a longer drive home, so listened to some of my frequencies, and about an hour in, and turned on some more music, which is like, why the fuck would I want to listen to more music? I've been listening to music for 10 hours, playing music for 10 hours. And Basement Jaxx Romeo came on, and I think that was like 2010. And so the song is, or at least the hook of it, you used to be my Romeo, let it all go. And that let it all go, it's just like angelic to me. Like I was like, that's my fucking choir. It is ministry choir right there. The let it all go. And it's layered in a very specific way. It sounds amazing. And it made me think about the fact that, if we consider Romeo being Romeo and Juliet, and how she felt she needed him so much. I'm not gonna, quote the story specifically, but that she felt she needed him so much, and they had this whole family feud, and they ended up dying for each other, needing something so deeply that it defines your entire sense of self, potentially to the point of death. Now, most people don't think that they would go to the point of death with their beliefs. It's not necessarily about the death part of it, but loving something so deeply, I would say, that it consumes your entire self. I was like, this is life, and then let it all go. You used to be my Romeo, let it all go. And I wanted to film a message on that, more exclusively, and I might at some point in time. Because our ego clings to the things that we think we need. And I changed my name, and everything went away. Everything went away. Anything that was of non-truth. And it happened almost miraculously. Relationships, people, roles, titles, it all just fucking left. And then you're standing there with yourself. So if you are manifesting a new life at some point in time, regardless of how, mine was, I think I was initiated. I was initiated into and unto the flame, baptized by the flame. That was, because I do feel tied to some of the more infernal archetypes of gods. So that was one of my many initiations. But as you become initiated to yourself as divinity, and that wish fulfillment, that new manifested life begins to reveal itself, it's first going to come with a stripping away of all the things that aren't that. And I heard it explained like years ago, like really early on, like on TikTok, where is when I was doing mindset coaching on TikTok, and I was like just kind of figuring out spirituality and all that. I mean, I think I've been slowly starting to remember it all my life, but I didn't realize there was like a specific area of study or things to study about that. I just had all these questions. And they said that they would tell you that, like, oh, it has to, and I think that is like a teaching of, it's somebody famous. It might be Abraham Hicks. I don't know, but like there has to, you have to make, there has to be space. You have to make space for the new manifestations. And I was like, that's kind of ridiculous. That doesn't really make sense. Like, oh, like your brain's only got like so much gigabyte hardware storage, and or you can only have like, I can't have these friends and those friends. I have to pick between them. Now, years later, and that's the thing, is that people will speak and you will understand them at the level of consciousness that you are currently occupying. So I wasn't at a level of consciousness, if it was Abraham Hicks, it doesn't really matter, but where I can understand what she was saying. Now I understand that as you change your field of resonance, meaning your thoughts and your predominant emotions and your state of I am and your state of understanding, and that field being where you consistently align yourself, as that shifts, as that state of I am shifts, as that field shifts, I mean, if you think about it, like quite literally, like shifting football fields, not that makes sense. Not that makes sense, but it's just like, the team's playing over here, we're not going to go with that. That just, but what I mean is quite literally, it is a moving of space. It is a moving of frequencies. Okay, this is a better explanation. The friends that you had and the life that you had and all of the things that you had, when you were in a field of fear predominantly, and that was driving all of your decisions, and that created a whole life for you, and you were living in a state of sleepwalking. As you ascend even to neutrality, some of those things that were in that field of fear, they're going to find themselves falling away. And it will be by very strange means. That's the thing, is that you can't control any of this. People will just leave. Jobs will just leave. Other stuff will come up. Other people will come up. You will find yourself attracted to new opportunities to generate income. You will find yourself with new ideas, seeing yourself in a different way, in a way that you had never even thought was possible for yourself, because now you're thinking that anything's possible for me. You're starting to see new avenues that are not clear, meaning you can't see from start to end, and that's not your job, but you can see that there's a next step to take. So as you are finding yourself changing your state and creating a new field of energy around yourself, things will leave. And when you find yourself in that space of solitude, you have no choice but to become self-absorbed. Now, again, that message is not to affirm the fact that we should then become engrossed in our 3D ego and start projecting that out at other people. And, because I would actually say, like, the narcissist is actually not self-absorbed, right? They're actually very, very externally absorbed. They want everybody around them to mirror back to them what they need to, what they want to believe about themselves. And they have grandiose means of communication in order to enforce said reflections of themselves, which is like, doesn't that just sound fucking exhausting? Like, why don't you just start and end with you? And then whatever comes. I don't keep too much investment at this point in time in my life, in social relationships. Whoever's around, whoever vibes, cool. If they don't, also cool. I don't spend a lot of time really talking to many people, the people around me, which are few. But even on that basis, like, not talking about clients, of course, they've got to have something to say that I want to hear. because I'm in this period of I would say deep self-absorption. And here's the thing: is I don't know that that's ever going to end. There will be probably eras of life that will be more open than others. There will be eras of life that will be more collaborative than others. I'm not in a particularly collaborative era of life. I see myself kind of shifting that way as I enter this new decade of my life. But you have to be self-absorbed. You cannot be so focused on the external world. Your attention is your currency. It is everything. Your attention is what manifests. Your focus predominantly is what manifests. And when I say attention, I don't mean, okay, I paid attention. I watched a video about getting my SP and I paid attention to that. And, where is it? Because actually what you're paying attention to is not the video. It's the fear of the fact that that person isn't there. And you would only know that if you've spent enough deep time with yourself to be able to assess and inquire as to why you're doing the things that you're doing in the first place. So you should think you're hot. You should think you're kind. You should think you're loving. You should like yourself. You should be comfortable spending time with yourself. You should be comfortable saying no. You should be comfortable living a lifestyle and a state of self that other people might not understand. You should be comfortable not needing to explain yourself to other people. And as you find yourself comfortable with all of those things, people will come, opportunities will come, jobs will come, spaces that are resonant with this I am that does not need external validation. All of the validating aspects of your world will fall into place. And we don't know when, and we don't know how. But when you're clinging with fear, and I grew up this way. I mean, I've always been just weird and different. And I don't say weird in a negative sense, but I've just always had just a very alternative way of viewing things, a very alternative perspective. And I had been searching for so long. I got married for that reason, out of fear. Well, that marriage ended because that was a fear-based marriage, or that was one of the aspects of it. I've taken jobs, I've maintained friendships that were long past expired because I was so desperate to be understood. And because my state of self, because my thoughts, because my emotional space of residence, and because my belief systems were in line with I'm not understood, and I'm looking for that on the outside, I was finding things on the outside that mirrored back the fact to me that I'm not understood. Now, I don't care if I'm understood. I don't know if you understand. If you hear me, great. If you don't, then also great. I hope you hear something else that helps you. It's fine. It's all fine. And I spent a lot of time. I mean, I spent, first 20, 25 years of my life wanting somebody to hear me, wanting to, but what that really is not wanting to be alone with the self again. I was not self-absorbed. So we'll wrap up this message today, the Ministry of Assumption. Absolute. Thank you for co-creating this moment with me, this transmission. Check out the Liberation Chronicle. That is the written word of this platform. And I'm doing a series on eroticism as the pathway to purpose. It's going to be a 3-episode feature on Dispatches from the Edge of Obvious on Spotify. That is a Spotify exclusive podcast. So that is linked in the ministry bio as well. So definitely check that out, because that is a deep dive into erotic philosophy. And erotic philosophy, as I've talked about directly and indirectly, not being sex, not being parts and friction and fluids, but being a way of understanding the world through vitality, through liveliness, through a sense of that which is felt, through a sense of that which is embodied. The erotic, which, if we're defining it that way, all of law of assumption is erotic in one way or the other. I just have a particular lens of looking at it that way, and I do refer to some particular philosophers there, so definitely check that out. Those are going to be a bit longer. The first episode of that series is an hour, so but I'm excited to get into that as well. So until next time.